Hello. Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Hello. Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Vilas Chaudhary from Raman Science Center, Nagpur, welcomes you to this great event, 150th birth anniversary of Lord Rutherford, the father of atomic nucleus. It's a great day for all of us because this year, on August 30th, we are celebrating 150th birth anniversary of Lord Ernest Rutherford. He is one of the most distinguished experimental physicists in the history of science, perhaps second only to Michael Faraday. Why is Rutherford considered so important in the history of physics? Because he is considered as the best experimentalist next to Michael Faraday for his right line of approach, simple directness, capacity to direct a group of co-workers. He was a great leader. In addition to discovering atomic nucleus, he has made most pioneering contribution to our knowledge of radioactivity, nuclear physics, artificial disintegration of atoms, etc. What is more, he has been a great leader of men and has guided and inspired many young physicists who won Nobel Prizes and made valuable research contributions. It is not common to celebrate 150th birth anniversary of men, but Lord Rutherford certainly deserved it. Today, we have organized a talk on this event, that is 150th birth anniversary of Lord Ernest Rutherford, the father of atomic nucleus, his life and work. And for this purpose, we have with us Dr. Ramesh Singru, former professor of physics, IIT Kanpur. This talk will be about his life and work, which can not only be informative to young students of science, but also can inspire them to study science more intensely. I welcome Dr. Singru sir, who is former professor of physics, IIT Kanpur. On behalf of all our viewers and Raman Science Center, I once again welcome Dr. Singru. I would introduce Dr. Singru in a brief. Dr. Singru was educated at Patwardhan High School, Nagpur, and Institute of Science, Nagpur University. After obtaining his MSc in physics in 1957, he joined Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, as a research assistant in experimental nuclear physics. In 1960, he was awarded Fulbright Fellowship to study at Purdue University, USA, from where he obtained his PhD degree in nuclear physics in 1964. He returned to India and resumed his job in TIFR, Mumbai, and carried out research in nuclear spectroscopy. In 1966, he moved to IIT Kanpur as a faculty member in their Department of Physics and became professor in 1975 and was the head of the department during 1982 to 86 and member Board of Governors during 1977 to 79. At IIT Kanpur, he taught at the undergraduate, MSc and PhD level, and he guided 15 PhD students. His area of research was application of experimental nuclear physics for the study of material using the technique of positron annihilation and Masabor spectroscopy. His theoretical research involved band structure calculation of metals and metal alloys. He has published about 150 research papers in international journals and has published one textbook on nuclear physics and has edited 3 research volumes. He has worked in UK, Germany, Switzerland, Holland, and Italy as a visiting professor. He was a member of International Committee on Low Energy Positron Annihilation and fellow of Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, Germany. He is also a fellow of Academy of Science in India and was a vice president of Maharashtra Academy of Sciences. He worked as an acting dean and professor of physics at St. James Medical College, West for a year in 2005. After his retirement from IIT Kanpur in 1996, it's a privilege that Dr. Singru held in Nagpur and was emeritus professor in Nagpur University. He has been teaching nuclear engineering power students at He was a visitor at DNIT Nagpur, where he taught mathematical physics to MSc students. With Raman Science Center also, and he keeps coming and visiting Raman Science Center also for guiding our students on various occasions. He also contributed his work in Mid-Scientist program organized by the Science Center on various platforms. And Dr. Singru, may I ask Dr. Singru to initiate? Thank you.
Good morning. I am Ramesh Singru, welcoming you from the Raman Science Center, Nagpur. As it has been told, today is the 150th anniversary of Lord Ernest Rutherford. Now, it is not common to celebrate 150th birth anniversary, but Lord Rutherford was not a common man. He was an extraordinary scientist, and the work that he did has really begun the nuclear physics in theory and experiment. I have one complaint. The complaint is our high school and college education, the due credit is not given to Ernest Rutherford for all the important discoveries he has contributed. Usually, most of the books and schools and even examination question paper deal with Rutherford in a very cursory manner about his experiment of scattering alpha particles from gold foil and what kind of result he obtained and how he proposed the model of nucleus. Actually, that was the beginning of a new age, that there is a strongly positive, massive nucleus at the center of an atom, and this nucleus is surrounded by electrons. And this gave rise to the atomic model which Bohr used to form the theory of atomic spectra. I am speaking from Raman Science Center, and Professor C.V. Raman discovered his Raman effect, and the theoretical explanation, quantum theoretical explanation of Raman effect came really from extension of Bohr's atomic theory, and Bohr's atomic theory was based on the Rutherford model. So directly and indirectly, Rutherford's discoveries have affected the whole growth of science, and his role in the history of physics has to be explained to students so that they get a proper perspective of how important work he has done, not only in finding the model of atomic nucleus, but also in other areas. The next slide, please. Rutherford made valuable discoveries in the field of nuclear physics, radioactivity, nuclear radiation, etc., and proposed the model of atomic nucleus, which was later used by Bohr to propose the theory of atomic spectra. Later on, As the director of Cavendish Laboratory, he inspired many physicists and taking ideas from him, people have discovered which we shall review later on. These are a picture. This is famous sentence that all science is the so one person cannot blame the science for only a collection is rather actually later in the countries brought out stamps, postal stamps showing this picture and giving him the due credit. Now we go to the next slide. And he is mainly known as a father of nuclear physics for the Rutherford model that was developed after his experiment with Geiger and Marsden. Then he gave rise to a new spectroscopy called Rutherford scattering. And one thing that is coming out of it is a new technique in material science called Rutherford backscattering spectroscopy, and it has been used very usefully to study new materials, particularly their surface physics. He is also credited with the discovery of the unit of activity has three names. One is that of Madame Marie Curie, other is Rutherford, and third is Becquerel. So the unit of radioactivity was given in his honor. Now, the artificial disintegration of atom is also a term used by him, which earned him Nobel Prize in 1908, but in chemistry when he was in Canada. Next, please. He was born on August 30th, 1871 in New Zealand. Ernest studied in a government school and then he completed his schooling all in New Zealand. Then he got a Royal Exhibition 1851 scholarship and he went to Cambridge as a research student at the Cavendish Laboratory, a famous laboratory and a great center of physics research at that time, and worked under Professor J.J. Thomson, whom we know as the person who studied cathode rays and discovered electron, and that was the beginning of new physics. Later, he left for Canada when he was given the opportunity to take the chair at McGill University in Montreal. So he traveled 3 continents, New Zealand, Great Britain, and then Canada. Next, please. I think we should study the path of his education as well as research career. So all his school and college education was in New Zealand, obtaining BA, BSc and MA degrees. But in today's structured education, one will wonder what has BA got to do with BSc and MA. But that was the kind of education system at that time. He carried out 2 years of research in New Zealand, studying magnetic properties of some new materials. Then in 1895, he proceeded to Cavendish Laboratory. As you know, Cavendish was a very well-known English scientist, and the main lab in Cambridge University was named after Cavendish. And he worked with J.J. Thomson, the discoverer of electron. His early work in Cambridge was on radio or electromagnetic waves, and he developed some machines to produce radio waves, to detect the radio waves, and to study the propagation of radio waves. But his work was soon overcome by the excellent work done by the Italian scientist Marconi, and therefore Rutherford did not go much deep into the study of radio waves. Next, please. Now, while he was there in Cambridge, he got an offer to as a professor to take the professorship in McGill University. But before that, in Cambridge, he started studying radioactivity, which was recently discovered by Henry Becquerel. And he found that the radiation consists of new particles, which he called alpha particle and beta particle. But after going to, I will come to that, his work on alpha particle and beta particle. But when he went to Canada, there he worked with a chemist by name Soddy, and he studied the radioactivity of uranium and other transuranium elements. And he found out that they gave very exciting results. He found out that in the radioactivity, the element changes from one type to another. So naturally, changing element causes the changes in chemical properties, and he used all the chemical analysis and his association with chemists to show that radioactivity results in changing one element to another, and which he called disintegration of the elements. One way you can disintegrate is by the chemical process or heat etc. But he's found out that in radioactivity there is a natural disintegration of the elements, and he studied the chemistry of these radioactive substances, and he was awarded a Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2008. This is a very unique example that his major contribution to physics were obtained after he completed his research by chemical methods and after being awarded a Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And the remaining work that he did was mostly in the physics part, but I don't understand why he was never given a second Nobel Prize for his work in radioactivity and nuclear physics. He found that in chemistry laboratory in Canada, he was very much isolated because the physics chemistry research culture in Canada was in a very primitive stage. More, he found that his research work was being overcome by the research done by the Curies, Marie Curie and her husband Joliot Curie in Paris. What happened was, in Paris there were very distinguished journals of research, and these journals were right there in Paris. So whatever result Marie Curie and her husband could get, they could publish them in the journal within a week. On the other hand, for Rutherford, he had to send it by sea mail to England, and all that took a gap of a couple of months, and his work was always considered secondary, being the primary work being by Curie's. So he was very frustrated because of that. And he decided to move to UK, and he got an offer from University of Manchester as a professor in 1909, back to Great Britain and lived in Great Britain till his death in 1937. Next. Later on, in between 1909 and 1990, about 10 years, important research in Manchester, and a lot of famous scientists who became famous after that came to England to work with him. In 1919, Rutherford was offered professorship and directorship of the Cavendish lab, and he lab as a director. He worked there till his death in October 1937. Next, please. While at Manchester and at Cambridge, Rutherford directed many valuable new research projects. He is more well for his scattering experiment from gold foil. But besides that, he thought that getting alpha particles from a radioactive source did not offer very energetic alpha particle projects. So he asked his associates and students like Cockcroft and Walton to develop a electrical generator so that he could use particles like proton and alpha particles at a very high energy, and high energy nuclear reactions could be studied. He also wanted to see the tracks formed by various elementary particles. So with Wilson and other people, he developed the cloud chamber, and these cloud chamber studies then became very important in the study of cosmic rays and in the study of various nuclear reactions. He also proposed that the nucleus consists of protons. And at that time, people thought that the nucleus consists of a proton about which electrons are there. And this was positive because they were coming out of the nucleus in the reactive beta. But later on, various elements were put, and it was realized that there must be a neutral particle inside the nucleus. So the concept of neutron was born, and his student Chadwick, they did several experiments, and the neutron was discovered, and a whole era of new physics, nuclear physics, was born after the discovery of neutron. Chadwick was actually his PhD students, and Chadwick also worked in Cambridge under him. Next, please. So to summarize, his two notable awards known in public life, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, not in physics, for his work on radioactivity, disintegration of atoms, etc. in 1908. He worked with Soddy. Soddy himself got a Nobel Prize in Chemistry in the 1930s. Then in honor of his work, the element of atomic number 104 is called Rutherfordium. As you know, there are other new isotopes which are named after, like californium, polonium, etc. So it was an honor for Rutherford. The element with Z equal to 104 was called Rutherfordium. Next, please. So the most famous work which he did was when after he won the Nobel Prize, and he was one of those very important persons who continued research even after winning the Nobel Prize. Next, please. Okay. Now, we go back in time after coming from New Zealand and joining the Cambridge lab, Cavendish lab. Rutherford and Thomson, they followed the work of Becquerel about uranium rays, as it was called, radioactive radiation at that time, and they worked together on the effectivity of electricity in gaseous sort of medium using X-rays. Then their interest moved to studying radioactivity, and at the end of that century, Rutherford discovered two types of nuclear radiation, and they were distinguished between themselves by the penetrating power that they obtained, that they had. The one radiation could penetrate few thin sheets of aluminum, while the other one could be stopped even by thick paper. So they were new radiations, and one radiation was positively charged and looked more massive, and the other one looked negatively charged but had smaller mass. He called them alpha rays or beta rays. And that those names have stuck for the last 20 years. And he studied the properties of this radiation and made use of the alpha radiation for his future experiments. Next, please. Now the alpha particle looked very heavy, and today we know that it consists of 2 protons and 2 neutrons, while beta particles are like electrons. It was Rutherford who identified that the alpha particle is the doubly ionized helium atom, or in other words, the nucleus of helium atom. Later on, the structure of nucleus was studied, but at that time, he was the first to study alpha and beta rays and classify their properties, and so that the study of these particles began with the work of Rutherford. Alpha particles were more massive, had double the charge of electron, while the electron was about 8,000 times less massive than alpha particles. So beta particles were identical with the electrons and a smaller charge. He also studied the laws of radioactivity and found out that specific property associated with radioactivity and half-life is the time taken by the radioactive sample to produce the number of atoms one then 1/4, again 1/4. Specific property distinguish various radioactive materials by their half-life, and because of that, the radioactive decay law, exponential law, was discovered, and that gave us great understanding about the properties of many radioisotopes and to use the isotopes for different. The half-life is a very important property, and it was due to the fact that we came to know that half-life is a unique property of a radioactive isotope. He found that alpha rays would not pass through a thin piece of paper, while beta particles were more powerful and could penetrate. Later on, people understood that because alpha particle is more massive, about 8,000 times more massive than electron, and has twice the charge, it causes the ionization more easily and more quickly, and it is therefore stopped more easily, and its penetration power is less compared to beta rays. So these preliminary studies of the penetration of alpha particles and beta particles through matter were studied by Rutherford, and he published several books, several papers. In fact, because to get credit to his research, he started sending small letters to the editor to the newly formed magazine called Nature, so that there was a healthy competition between Rutherford and the Curies, Marie Curie and her husband Pierre Curie, and he wanted to overcome the publication barrier. So he published a lot of papers, and many new ideas were born in the community of physicists, and therefore he gave rise to a lot of new research among the people there. Next, please. So, what is the summary of the properties of alpha particles? That first he found out that the Rutherford, the alpha particle is a particulate matter. It is not a wave, because he tried to do diffraction experiment, and the diffraction experiment showed that alpha particles don't diffract, so that radiation is a particulate radiation and not a wave. Later on, when gamma rays were found, it was found that gamma rays are electromagnetic waves, and they would also show diffraction effect. The next thing was alpha rays deflect towards the negatively charged electric terminal. So that means they are positively charged. On the other hand, the beta particles were attracted by the positive terminal. So beta particles are negatively charged. Now, in the alpha ray experiment, we found that if you apply electric field, the deflection of alpha ray is smaller compared to that of beta particles. And that means alpha particle must be, their charge and mass is not same as the electron. And later on, you are able to show that the mass is about 8,000 times and the charge is twice that of the electron, but of positive nature. Next, please. So, to summarize up to this point, Rutherford discovered and named alpha particles, alpha particle rays, and beta decay rays, and combined the terms alpha and beta and gamma rays. He was the first person to artificially disintegrate a nucleus. What I mean to say is, in a radioactive decay, the atomic disintegration is natural. It is a natural property of a radioactive isotope, and therefore the disintegration or change of element that occurs is by a natural process. On the other hand, he did scattering experiment, bombarding nitrogen 13 with alpha particles and obtained oxygen and a proton. So he showed by artificial irradiation by projectiles like alpha particles change the element, and the whole nuclear reaction leads to a disintegration of atoms. And he was the first person to artificially disintegrate. Today, we speak about Large Hadron Collider. Now, Large Hadron Collider at CERN, Geneva, is nothing but an extension of the preliminary experiment done by Rutherford. Only in his case, the projectiles were different, targets were different, and the energy involved in that was different. The aim of the experiment was very different. But you can say that during the last 100 years, the original idea of Rutherford of bombarding a target with a projectile like alpha particle and obtaining a new element or new product is the basic idea behind the Large Hadron Collider. In fact, he to the development of machines like Cockcroft-Milton generator, Lorentz cyclotron, synchrocyclotron, Van de Graaff accelerator, etc. And as we all know, today, all these high energy machines or particle accelerators have gone much beyond studying nuclear physics. They have been used in nuclear medicine, as in cancer theory, in studying material science, studying basic processes that occur via the quarks and the nuclear particles. So you can say that Rutherford was the primary person to think of an experiment involving a energetic projectile falling on a target and creating a series of new discoveries. He was the one who identified alpha particles as helium nuclei because they were identical with the helium doubly ionized ion. What he did was the doubly ionized helium and alpha particles were studied by optical spectroscopy, and he identified the helium spectral lines and then demonstrated that alpha particles are helium nuclei. Now, his gold foil experiment helped to describe the nuclear structure of the atom. At that time, the idea of J.J. Thomson was that the atom is a plum pudding model. We'll come to that. Now the question, the problem about plum pudding model is, plum pudding is a British dessert recipe, and I have found, including myself, that students in India don't exactly understand what does plum pudding mean. In a very simple manner, plum pudding can be compared with our Indian dessert, which we call shira in Marathi or halwa in Hindi. In plum pudding, there is a pudding and the pieces of plum are put like we put kismis or the raisins in the shira or halwa that we make. So at that time, the hypothesis J.J. Thomson was that atom is neutral and electrically neutral, and it obtains its neutrality because there is a distribution of uniform distribution of positive charge, and among the positive charge there is pieces which are like plums or like raisins, like kismis, and they have the negative charge. So the total electric charge is 0, and in this kind of thing, how the radiation comes and all these things were really not clear. So Rutherford thought about this, and he thought like this, that if the plum pudding model is really correct, then what will happen is, if you shoot alpha particles, they will just go through because the positive charge and the negative charge will interact with the alpha particles through Coulomb force. Positive charge will repel them because alpha particles are positively charged, and the negative electric charge will attract them. So if from the left hand side you send alpha particles into a nucleus, you should see that all the alpha particles will go almost unchanged in their trajectory and go through to the right side. So he thought of this experiment when he was at Manchester, and he did firstly the scattering of alpha particles through thin mica sheets. And he had a student by name Geiger, Hans Geiger, who came from Germany. At that time, before the World War I, there were very friendly relations between the scientists in England and scientists in Germany. And Hans Geiger came to Manchester to work with Rutherford. Rutherford hired one more undergraduate student called Marsden and gave them to this idea to study alpha particle scattering by thin sheets of mica. Next, please. We will come back to this later on with some diversion. Can we go to the next one? We will come back to this. Okay. Next, please. Next one. Okay. So, J.J. Thomson discovered electron in 1897, and after 1 year, he suggested an atomic model, which was called plum pudding model, and atoms are just positively charged particle lumps of matter in which electrons are embedded in them. Next, please. So, why was it not correct? It was not widely accepted, but there was no other model at that time available, and it could not explain the features of the spectrum obtained by Rydberg and so many other people about the spectrum of hydrogen and atom. But they had no choice because there was no other model. So Rutherford performed a number of experiments with Geiger and Marsden on the scattering of alpha particles by very thin gold foil. And the result that he obtained could not be explained on Thomson's model. So let us try to see more details of this experiment. Next, please. So the idea was there is a alpha particle source and it emitted alpha particles which were collimated by a lead collimator allowed to fall on a gold foil, and then after this impact, the alpha particle, how their intensity change with angle. Theta is the angle made by the scattered alpha particle with the original direction, and by changing theta, how the number of particles at that angle theta change is what we have tried to find. Next, please. So, this is a picture, schematic picture of the source of alpha particle, some radioactive substance. The beam of alpha particles coming, falling on a gold foil. Now, after falling on the gold foil, they got scattered. And because the angular dependence of the scattering alpha particles, scattered alpha particles had to be found, some detector had to be there. At that time, the so-called Geiger-Müller counter was not invented. So what they did was, they had a circular zinc sulfide coated plate. And the idea was when the alpha particle fell on this plate, there was fluorescence obtained and a flash was there. So it was a very tedious experiment. And because it was a visual impairment in the detection of this, it had to be done very carefully, very patiently, and for over a long time. So both Geiger and Marsden spent hours and hours. First, they had to get used to the intensity level and then not miss any flash occurring on this cylindrical circular detector, and note down that at what angle how many such scattered particles had come. So one has to see that the experimentation at that time was very difficult, very time consuming, very tiring, and very, very patient observer had to be there. And Geiger and Marsden did a great, they obliged all of us that they did this experiment and obtained good reliable results. Next, please. Another thing to show that this is a thin gold foil and some particles are going through straight, some are scattered at small angles. But the most surprising thing was some were scattered at angles larger than 90 degrees. If the Plum-Pudding model were correct, then the incident alpha particles, after hitting the gold atoms, would have gone straight because there was nothing massive in their way. The electron could not deflect the alpha particles because of their smaller mass and negative charge. On the other hand, the positive charge could scatter them, but since it was distributed very evenly and very uniformly, they had no power to scatter the incident alpha particles. So the next slide shows that the scattering intensity, maximum intensity was at 0 degrees of scattering, but some sizable intensity was there at angles larger than 0, and particularly one event in 20,000 events showed that the alpha particle was also turned back through an angle like 150 degrees. This Rutherford found very difficult to understand, because if you have a bale of cotton and if you shoot a bullet in that, there is very little chance that the bullet will come back. Or like in the language of cricket, if you had 3 stumps made out of cotton and if you have a fast bowler bowling at it, there is very little chance that the fast ball will come back. So the experiment showing that there are deflections larger about 150 degrees show that the alpha particles are hitting something that is very massive and something that is positively charged, because the Coulomb repulsion will give rise to this scattering. No other interaction is involved. Today we know there is strong interaction, weak interaction, Coulomb interaction, and the gravitational interaction. At that time, the only interaction known was the Coulomb interaction and the gravitational interaction. So, if Plum-Pudding model were correct, both the gravitational interaction and the Coulomb interaction would not turn back incident alpha particle through, say, 150 degrees. But the only satisfactory explanation was that there must be inside the atom a very massive particle carrying a positive charge, which, because of the Coulomb repulsion, turns back the incident alpha particle. So, what Rutherford did, he did not stop only at these measurements. For 2 years, he worked very hard on the actual theory of what kind of collision will give this kind of scattering phenomena, this kind of curve. And he came to a conclusion that atom is mostly empty, and at this very small center, there is a massive particle positively charged, which is called nucleus of the atom. And the electrons are going around this in some planetary motion. He could not explain why the electrons are there and going, but at least one thing was very sure from his experiment, that there is the atomic nucleus at the center, and the atomic structure is not described by the Plum-Pudding model, but by a side of atomic nucleus model. Next, please. So once again, the Plum-Pudding model would have shown the particles are not deflected much, but the Rutherford model involving the atomic nucleus would show that the particles can, in some cases, like 1 in 20,000 events, they show. Now, I'm sure many of you have done some kind of research, some kind of experiment, and to detect an event which has a probability of 1 in 20,000, and to be confident about it requires lot of experimental skill and patience. And we have given it to Geiger and Marsden. This is one of the hardest experiments ever done in physics, and we owe it to Geiger and Marsden for tenaciously following the results and making people believe that what they observed is correct. There are very few experiments like this in the history of physics which have changed the course of progress in physics. Next, please. So once again, plum pudding model, alpha particle coming from left. They are hitting the electrons but not getting deflected because electron is has a very small mass, and the positive charge is distributed, so it is not effective in reflecting through large angles. On the other hand, if the nucleus is there and the size of nucleus is like I'm sitting in this hall, so a small dot there in this room is the size of nucleus compared to the size of atom. So all the mass is concentrated there, and the density of nuclear matter is therefore very, very high, and therefore the Coulomb interaction between the two is able to turn back the alpha particles, and Rutherford worked out all the theory, published it, then only claimed that his model describes the atomic structure and atomic nucleus properly. Next, please. So once again, plum pudding model does not describe the observation. Next slide shows that the model of atom being formed by nuclei and the thin foil being able to turn back some of the alpha particles is shown pictorially here. Next, please. So what are the conclusions that we obtained? Atom is mostly empty space. Then nucleus inside, sitting at the center of the atom, is positively charged and is very massive. Its mass is very, very high. Almost all the mass of the atom is inside the nucleus. Electrons float around the nucleus. Now, how they float, how they give rise to the atomic spectra was the job done by Bohr. And after these results were published and accepted by the scientific community, Niels Bohr moved from Denmark to England and stayed with Rutherford in Manchester to learn more from him, to have discussions in the laboratory group, and then come out with his theory of atomic spectra. Next, please. Now, one thing that we want to understand is this picture. Let us say you are driving a car at very high speed, and a moth or some kida, some worm, comes and hits your windshield. It doesn't deflect your car. The worm is hit and it's finished, and you don't even realize that you have hit a moth. But one thing that actually occurs, not so much in India, it can occur in the Tadoba forest or like some forest in our area, where you are driving a car at a speed of 60 kilometers, 90 kilometers, and a deer crosses the road at that time and it hits the car. Now, this can be a very serious situation because this kind of collision changes the direction of the car, and the car can go and hit the tree or can get overturned. And such accidents actually happen. And I was once traveling in Texas, and a deer had almost hit our car and we were saved. But this can be a serious situation for a car driving in jungle. So a similarity is there that alpha particle is not electron, it is alpha particle 8,000 times more massive. It has got good velocity and it comes and hits the nucleus, which is much larger in size, much larger in mass and charges also. And both the alpha particle is deflected and the nucleus is also recoiled. So that is the way to understand that why a model like the plum pudding model or like the halwa model, I said, halwa with resins, does not work, but the Rutherford model works. Next, please. So, Rutherford model was accepted. Now, I want to say something to students at this stage. A lot of the theoretical analysis of Rutherford scattering was done using the theory of collision and scattering, the classical model, classical theory. Now, I always tell my students that when you leave for the class, you are warned by your parents that avoid any collision. Then why should we study collisions in physics? Now, collisions classically and then quantum mechanically are both very important way to accept various theories or reject various theories. So whenever we are taught the classical theory of collisions, where laws of conservation of linear momentum, conservation of energy, conservation of angular momentum, all these have to be understood very clearly because advanced physics has emerged only out of the study of collisions. So after Rutherford suggested his model, it was accepted because he proved scattering of alpha particles with mathematical formula, and mathematically the result showed exactly what he had observed. And then he modeled that there is a central massive nucleus in which all the positive charge is concentrated and most of the mass is also concentrated. So a massive positively charged body called atomic nucleus is at the center of the atom. A cloud of negatively charged particles, electrons, are surrounding this nucleus. They are moving around the nucleus. Now, how can they move around without getting attracted to the nucleus and getting annihilated with the positive charge was explained by Bohr in the following years by the concept of stationary states, stationary orbits, and that was all because of the quantum theory that was born and that was there. So you can say Rutherford's experiments with alpha particles on gold foil gave rise to the birth of quantum theory. Another phenomena that gave rise to quantum theory was photoelectric effect and its explanation given by Albert Einstein. So all these pieces build up the particularly puzzle, and the puzzle of atomic structure started unwinding by this experiment. Next slide, please. So, Rutherford's experiment on scattering, first there was experiment, then there was a theoretical explanation, then there was a mathematical analysis, and again by doing the same experiment with better sophistication, all the theory was experimentally verified. So, whenever we teach Rutherford scattering to high school students, the only thing that we tell them is how did he conduct the experiment, what did he find, and that this gave rise to the concept of atomic nucleus. But the history behind all this, and that Rutherford contributed to physics beyond this alpha ray scattering, is not properly underlined. That this experiment was done, this theory was proposed after he got a Nobel Prize in chemistry for radioactivity, not for nuclear physics, is not explained. And how this idea later on was extended, okay, there is an atomic nucleus at the center of an atom. What is there inside the atom? Today we know that there are neutrons, protons, and their structure we can now theorize in terms of quarks. But at that time, this was an encouragement for further experiments, further theoretical analysis, that okay, we now know there is the nucleus, but what is inside nucleus? How do you explain the alpha decay in terms of quantum mechanics? How do you explain beta decay in terms of quantum mechanics? And that gave rise to the tunneling effect in alpha decay, that there is a three-body decay in beta decay. Neutron changes into a proton through a weak interaction. Proton changes into a neutron to give rise to a positron. And a third particle, neutrino, is obtained. And now today the whole neutrino physics itself has become a very large science by itself. And all these ideas to take us back, how energy is produced in the sun, in the stars, and therefore how can we produce fusion in the laboratory, in the earth, how can we harness? I'm going to say that because of Rutherford, Chadwick could discover neutron, and after discovery of neutron, so many new things were studied, and they led to the nuclear fission phenomena, and fission for energy production, fission for atomic bomb, and atomic bomb has affected whole international history, politics, strategy, and these studies. So, in a way, all these things branched out of this famous Rutherford experiment. Next slide, please. Now, the Rutherford was not only a very good experimentalist himself, he could suggest experiments, guide them, and lead them to very important discoveries. You perhaps have heard of one phrase. In zoology, there is a phrase called alpha male. There is every animal group, there is one animal, one particular identity who becomes the mukhya or leader of the group, and the group follows him. He takes the decision when to attack, when to run away, when to come together. So, and it is in biology, zoology, alpha male. If you observe a group of monkeys that visit us in Nagpur, you will see there is one large fellow among them who guides in their own language what the whole group has to do. So at that time, Rutherford was called alpha male of the physics community at Cambridge. He was a very dominating person, at the same time very sympathetic, very helpful, very kind person. And some of his notable PhD students are Blackett. Blackett has a very good connection with India. Nehru had invited Blackett to design CSIR and all other labs in India. So he's a good friend of India. Then Cockcroft and Walton, who developed the high particle accelerator, the first high particle accelerator in Cambridge. Bohr, of course, we all know, who was there. Geiger, he went back to Germany during the First World War, and he was a Nazi sympathizer, and he never returned to England. But he did some work in nuclear physics, particularly the thing like Geiger-Müller counter, which has helped nuclear experiments. Hahn, who, as you know, Otto Hahn, he was a Berliner. He came to work with Rutherford, and he went back, and when the neutron was discovered, he did experiment, and Hahn and Strassmann discovered the nuclear fission, and it was explained by Leis and Weidner. Kapitsa, a person, a Russian scientist, mostly who was killed in the World War I, but who was the one who gave the importance to atomic number. Chadwick, who discovered neutron, and in one Indian, Daulat Singh Kothari, who was in Delhi, and under his guidance, the physics department of Delhi University grew a lot and earned a worldwide recognition as one of the best physics departments of India. And he was the one who advised Nehru on many matters of science policy. Among the Nobel Prizes that people won among the students are Chadwick for the discovery of neutron, Cockcroft and Walden for the invention of the machine, Wilson for the cloud chamber and detection of charged particle trajectories through cloud chamber, Blackett, then Appleton in another field, which is radio astronomy, Niels Bohr, Friedrich Soddy, Otto Hahn. I want to mention one more name and tell you a story. Kapitsa was a very brilliant Russian scientist, and he traveled all the way to England to work with Rutherford in the laboratory at Manchester. So he took an interview, took an appointment with Rutherford and went to him. He said, I have come all the way from Russia to work. Please admit me to your group. So Rutherford looked at him and said, sorry, I cannot accept you because I want to limit the group of my students to 20 students and all the places are filled. There is no room for you. You please find some other guy. So Kapitsa was a very smart young Russian guy. He said, Professor Rutherford, I understand what you say. Can I ask you one question? Can you please answer it in a very simple way? So Rutherford said, yes, go ahead, ask your question. So Kapitsa said, you have made so many experiments. What is the error of measurement that you have in your experiment? So Rutherford did not understand what he said and very casually said, oh, maybe 1 in 20. That is my 5% is my error of So Kapitsa smiled and said, okay, that means if you have room for 20 students, you can easily admit 21st student and that would be me. So Rutherford was very impressed and he accepted Kapitsa as his student. And as you all know, Kapitsa went back to Russia and he obtained his Nobel Prize, not in nuclear physics, but in low temperature physics, and he is recognized as one of the smartest Russian scientists in the history of science. There are many stories like this about Rutherford, but let's just go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So, coming back to whole thing, because of want of time, I cannot describe all other work that he has done, but nuclear reaction, discovery of neutron, identifying neutron as a particle inside the nucleus, all these things happened under his guidance. And the University of Cambridge was the Makkah of nuclear physics relativity at that time. And we therefore remember him today for his virtues like right line of approach, simple direct experimentation, capacity to direct a group of co-workers, and as a great human leader, which is very important. Thank you very much. So I wish to thank you all for listening to me, and I hope this will give you interest I have only spoken about Rutherford, but there is so much to know and study about other famous physicists that have given us new knowledge during the last 100 years. And I would request the Raman Science Center to keep this theme and invite people to talk about how, for example, neutron was discovered, how nuclear fission was discovered, how nuclear fusion was discovered, because you don't get an idea about the culture of science unless you study the history of science. So to the students who are listening, it is not the question of solving a question carrying 3 marks, 4 marks, but getting inspired by the content of that particular topic and going deep. And now with the Google and all kinds of information inputs that are available online, it should be a fascinating hobby to study how different discoveries were made. And discovery and curiosity is what Professor Raman imbibed in his students. I have interacted with some of his students, Professor Raman's students, and they told me how important it was for him to be curious. So I hope that this culture of curiosity stays with you. Thank you again.
So are there any questions? Anybody want to ask a question? Please put on your videos. Let us see who all are joining us. Put on your videos. Please let us see. And if you have any question you have? Yes, I can see some of the faces now, but then you all please put on your videos. Let us see who all are joining. Let us see your faces. And then if you have any question, sir will be very happy to answer your queries if you have any. Any queries? Any questions regarding this lecture? What you understood, what you didn't understood, or what something else you would like to know? Anything? Nothing. So I should take that you understood everything. Right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Switch on your mics.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Unmute your mics. Please unmute your mics.
Yes, sir.
Kalidas, you
Yes.
want to ask something? Just now you joined. Okay. Unmute your mics and ask your question if you have any. Yes. Any question? Speaker connected? Okay. So I think you all have understood what sir has communicated to you. And it was the nice communication by Singhu sir, as we are celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Professor Rutherford, and sir has given all the idea how he has carried out that experiment, alpha particle striking the metal foil, and then how he concluded and how Rutherford has concluded that it is the massive nucleus, compactly packed nucleus at the center of the atom, and then the electrons are surrounding, revolving around it, and how other people have even contributed. Before that, there was a Coulomb model suggested by Thomson and all. So, sir has given a whole storyline how the things have gone and how
Rutherford has concluded, and he has given a wonderful model of central atom, and then how the things have gone, and then sir has also given an idea about the Large Hadron Collider. That was the recent experiment performed by our physicists all over the world. And then this kind of, learning about all this gives us the inspiration to know more about it and to do more scientific things like this in the future. So, to organize this lecture, Professor Madhukar Apte sir, who was the former local advisory committee of Raman Science Center's member, he was very instrumental. He was the reader in Department of Physics, SFS College, and because of Madhukar Apte sir, we could have here Dr. Ramesh Singru sir, and as you know, Singru sir worked at various positions in TIFR, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, and then in various places abroad, and then finally as a professor at IIT Kanpur. And sir is there in Nagpur, and if you have any queries related to this topic or any other topic, he will be very happy to guide you all. And he is also associated with Raman Science Center, and we'll also be, sir, among you for any help whenever we require. So let us thank Singru sir for coming over here and delivering a wonderful talk on this important occasion. And on behalf of Raman Science Center and National Council of Science Museums and all the participants, those who have joined online for this lecture, I thank Dr. Ramesh Singru sir, and I request Education Officer Sri Vilas Chaudhary sir to felicitate Dr. Singru sir by presenting a small memento as a token of our love to Singru sir.
Thank you very much.
And with this, since there are no questions, but you all have the email ID of Raman Science Center, and you have the Facebook group, which was specially made for this purpose. So you can write all your questions. Now, as sir has suggested, we have to organize many such events to inform our students and the public general related to current happening and what is going on in the scientific community. So we have another sessions we are organizing on the scientific culture, International Day of Scientific Culture on 28th September. There will be many more such programs during this event. The day will fall on 28th September in the next month, and we will send the information regarding this, and I hope you all will participate and enjoy this scientific knowledge. Thank you very much. Thanks to one and all. Thank you, Singru sir, once again. Thank you very much for coming and delivering. Thank you. Bye-bye, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.